So how are travelers reacting? Angi Gonzalez joining us now live from LaGuardia Airport with more. Angie?
Anthony, I've been surprised twice. Right now, 10 o'clock at night, you might not expect the airport to be that busy. It's actually not the case. We've seen quite a few people come into Terminal A here at LaGuardia Airport. That was not the case earlier this evening when we were in another terminal. Turns out COVID-19 is keeping a lot of people home this holiday season, and we know that while they are staying home, they're still coming to the airport for another reason: to get a COVID test. Inside Terminal B at LaGuardia Airport, the day before Christmas Eve, the departures area was missing something. A year ago, this is what Terminal B's arrival area looked like around the same time. This year, you'll find the crowds in the parking lot. Dozens stood in line Wednesday evening to get a coronavirus test at a makeshift testing center. The majority of those waiting said they were there to put their own minds at ease.
I'm here because I'm going to go home and see some family, but before I see them, I just want to make sure that I test negative.
This despite pleas by the mayor, governor, and health officials asking New Yorkers to stay home. Some took that advice as a suggestion.
I mean, I think it's more like mom guilt. I feel like I've been safe and can make it safe, so really just going because of that.
Some arrived with luggage in hand, planning to board a plane after getting their results. Others just arrived and opted for a test in addition to following state guidelines. Among the requirements is filling out a traveler health form.
There were some people handing out forms. I just did it from my phone. I just scanned the code and I did it online super quick.
There were also those who came out of necessity, required to provide proof of a negative test before a trip abroad. One couple didn't seem worried about getting COVID while away from home, citing the precautions they've taken voluntarily.
Take the proper precautions. I mean, there's no such thing as zero risk, but yeah, I think we're doing it responsibly.
This is going to be my 5th test in like 10 days because I was in Utah, so I had a test before I came back, and then I had a test on the 3rd day, which was 2 days ago, and then we did 2 tests today, but we're not sure that we're going to get the results in time.
And Anthony, the Port Authority issued an advisory this week saying that they projected the coronavirus pandemic would have a severe impact on holiday travel. They anticipate that 72% fewer holiday travelers will be making their way through area airports this time around, compared, of course, to the same time last year. But that's the very latest from LaGuardia. Angi Gonzalez, New York 1. Anthony, back to you.
An unprecedented year. Okay, Angie, thanks. One of the questions left unanswered tonight is how much will that stimulus check end up being? $600, $2,000? Well, as lawmakers hash that out, people who work in the entertainment industry are expecting a boost. The legislation passed by the House and Senate would give shuttered concert halls and comedy clubs some relief as they struggle to stay afloat. Angi Gonzalez joining us now from a performance venue in Queens with reaction. Angie?
Struggling to stay afloat is an understatement, Anthony. We know a lot of these businesses have not been able to open for 9 months straight. Imagine that. So you can understand there is some skepticism among some in the industry about just how much this money will actually help them in the long run.
We have a lot of local Queens vendors who don't have enough stuff to have their own shop.
Cambry Cruz doesn't operate a gift shop. She is the owner of QED Astoria, which up until 9 months ago was a profitable entertainment venue that hosted a variety of events, including stand-up comedy. They used to sell stuff like this on the side.
QED is in this one. We're at the end of the line, and it's a guide to different parts of the city that are at the end of the subway line.
But selling items like these is how Cruz has made ends meet since March. Since the beginning of the pandemic, there's been a ban across New York State prohibiting ticketed events for live entertainment. And unlike restaurants and gyms, there's been no movement at all to reopen the industry, which has been hard for her, but has also sidelined her husband, who is a comedian.
I've been saying that this is our lemonade. I was given a whole bunch of lemons, and this is the lemonade we made out of it.
and she's stuck it out long enough to see lawmakers throw the industry a lifeline. Part of the latest COVID-19 stimulus includes the Save Our Stages Act, co-sponsored by New York Senator Charles Schumer.
But there are hundreds of these places in Brooklyn and Queens and Bronx and Manhattan.
It includes $15 billion in relief, earmarked specifically for comedy clubs, independent movie venues, and similar cultural institutions. The grants, to be distributed by the Small Business Administration, can be used to cover 6 months of payroll and costs like rent, utilities, and maintenance.
This bill is meant for exactly for venues like QED. We fit all the guidelines and the parameters.
To qualify, entertainment venues must have lost at least 25% of their annual revenue. Cruz estimates she's lost more than 70%, a far cry from where she was just a year ago.
We had turned a profit, we had no debt, and we had a flush bank account. That flush bank account is now down to zero, and we are in debt now.
But Cruz is only cautiously optimistic about how much Save Our Stages will help her in the long run. In the meantime, she's doing what she can to help other small business owners, operating a holiday pop-up with other local vendors.
So Cambry has given me this opportunity, and I'm so thankful for it because I work out of my apartment and sell online.
So, Anthony, while the Save Our Stages Act promises to keep places like QED Astoria open, the question is how they will actually do that, because there is no specific date that venues like this are scheduled to reopen. That's the very latest from Astoria. Angi Gonzalez, New York 1. Anthony, back to you.
All right, Angie, thanks. During the pandemic, our Angi Gonzalez has been talking to people in Queens tonight, and she has reaction. So, Angie, we know a lot of people will be getting $600 checks. The question is it anywhere near enough?
I think you know the answer to that, Anthony, frankly, and talking to the workers here, the owner of this restaurant and a couple of local elected officials, they say that might be enough money when it comes to other places in the country, but in New York City, it's just not enough.
This part over here is normally our indoor dining.
Just a year ago, Marcus Munoz never would have imagined he'd be serving the majority of his guests on the street corner outside his restaurant. In fact, he thinks mojitos might not be here today if it wasn't for the first stimulus package and the Paycheck Protection Program. He's happy another round of PPP money is part of the latest COVID relief bill and hopes he'll qualify for some to pay for the thousands in improvements he's made just to stay open.
Everything we build in cost us a lot of money. This is a big investment, and the government is not helping us.
But that's one of only a few things in the legislation that Munoz thinks will help other small businesses, his employees, and people who live in this neighborhood. Without indoor dining, he's had to cut hours for staff, and if he has to lay off workers in the months to come, he knows an extra $300 in unemployment assistance a week won't help the people he considers family.
That's a nonsense. It makes no sense. Who's gonna live with that?
Jamie Pavone says he started working at Mojitos in February, so he didn't qualify for unemployment in the spring. Fortunately, he did get a $1,200 stimulus check approved by lawmakers in March. But now, months later, he's worried the only help coming is a $600 check.
It's difficult, especially with how things turned out just this month. Things have changed a lot for us, from the indoor dining being canceled.
And he has a lot more bills to pay. In October, he moved out of an apartment that he shared with his mom and aunt to live with his fiancée.
It's getting really difficult to stay afloat. All of us have bills to pay, have rent, and it's just hard to deal with.
It's a hardship being felt across Jackson Heights. Less than a block away from the restaurant is this community fridge, offering free meals to those in need. So the latest stimulus infuriates some who see their constituents struggling every day.
The minute we put food in our community fridge, it's gone within the next hour or two. That is how dire the situation is here. This is a very serious crisis that the federal and state government has failed to take seriously.
And for lawmakers on their way to serving voters, the situation is also frustrating. Jessica Gonzalez Rojas is the assembly member-elect for the 34th District, which includes Jackson Heights.
I have just weeks to get started, and I've already been raising my voice and working with local business members and community members and excluded workers to elevate their stories.
And Anthony, after the package passed in the House of Representatives, the House Democratic Caucus Chairman Hakeem Jeffries here of New York City actually put out a statement which said, in part, House Democrats know that our work is not over. That's the very latest from Jackson Heights. Angi Gonzalez, New York 1. Anthony, back to you.
Okay, Angie, thanks.
Fast and heavy right now, making for hazardous driving conditions. Speaking of driving, Angi Gonzalez spared from being out in the elements tonight. She is in our live truck with another look at what's happening from the safety and security of inside that van. Angie.
Yes, and Cheryl, I'm very happy to be inside of a vehicle right now, but we are using caution in trying to get around these roadways. As Dan mentioned, you can take a look at the roadway in front of us right now. We are in the East Village. You cannot see the asphalt. As Dan mentioned, some of the side streets, which is what we are on right now, are not getting as much attention as some of the larger thoroughfares. Like we're coming up on First Avenue here. You can see the asphalt here on the roadway. Some of the intersections have been plowed, but as we're coming along to some of these outdoor dining structures, you can see that some of them, the plows have actually pushed up some of the snow onto them. I was passing by one earlier in the evening and saw that snow had started to spill into some of these outdoor dining structures, probably why the city said that they weren't going to be allowing restaurants to reopen them until sometime tomorrow afternoon. Lots of the vehicles, though, if you're planning on driving sometime in the morning, which we're not recommending, but if you are, you're going to have to go out pretty early because, as you can see, there is quite a bit of snow packed up on top of these cars. I will tell you, Cheryl, that we were questioning exactly how many of the sanitation trucks we were seeing early on in the night. That has since changed. We've seen quite a few plows and emergency vehicles, so it does appear that they are no longer on the highways. They are making their way into city streets. Cheryl?
Okay, Angie will be checking back with you soon. And speaking of driving, alternate side of the street parking rules suspended Thursday. You can sleep in the morning. And while mass transit is best, it's not guaranteed on a night like this. Travelers dealing with scattered five boroughs tonight. How are those sidewalk structures holding up in this ferocious storm? For that part of our coverage, let's check in with Angi Gonzalez in the East Village tonight. Angie.
Well, Cheryl, for the thousands of dollars that some of these restaurant owners paid for those outdoor structures, they seem to be standing up pretty well at this point. And to be frank, restaurant officials weren't too surprised that they weren't going to be able to offer outdoor dining, at least on the street during the storm. But that doesn't mean outdoor dining totally was off limits. We actually caught up with some folks that were enjoying the snow.
Are you guys open?
We are.
You've had chocolate?
Yes.
Considering the cold and snowy weather, dropping by the 787 Coffee Company made sense to some of those passing by on Wednesday night. And locals didn't think twice about coming in to grab something before heading home. A small few were willing to take part in one of the only options the cafe and consumers still have available to them. With indoor dining off limits and outdoor dining limited to sidewalk setups, these three friends decided to enjoy their hot drinks in the cold.
I really wanted a hot chocolate, and it's too cold to walk around. It's honestly a lot better to sit here and warm myself up than walk around with it.
I love the snow, especially in the city. That's my favorite. It's just my favorite season is the winter.
Also open, Butter Lane Cupcakes just a few doors down.
Can I get a 4-box?
Emma said she didn't think twice about keeping the place open. They've got product to sell and bills to pay.
We're still open. We make our cupcakes every day. We've made them for the day. I plan on being here until the end of the day, and I live nearby, so I figured I might as well stay open, bring people some cupcakes if they come in to hunker down.
While the severity of the storm may have kept some away, others were thankful they could still get what they needed.
It's my friend's birthday, and she lives right next door, and we really like this place.
And Cheryl, while most of the places here in the East Village were closed, of the ones that did have signs for customers in case they stopped by, most of them said that they planned on opening as soon as the city would let them, hopefully on Thursday afternoon. But some of the restaurants that were closed did not plan on reopening until sometime on Friday. But that's the very latest from the East Village. Angi Gonzalez, New York 1. Cheryl, back to you.
Quick question for you, Angie. What about those side structures? Some of them had tents, and that snow sitting on top of tents, not a good thing.
Lots of the stuff that was inside of those outdoor structures have been cleared. So fortunately, none of those things have been tossed around. Cheryl, I did walk by a couple of those outdoor structures and they did have snow seeping inside. So when restaurant owners return to work on Thursday, they're going to have to do a little bit of cleaning themselves before they can start serving customers again. Cheryl?
Yeah, they will have their work cut out for them. Angie, thank you for that live report. We move next to Queens.
Nature throws at us. Angi Gonzalez following that part of the story now. She joins us live from Soho with more. Angie?
The calm before the storm, Anthony. We're at the sanitation department's depot here in Soho. Nothing happening just yet, but we know that there's plenty of time before the snow starts to fall. And the question is, are they really ready for everything? The sanitation department, for the first time, is going to have to deal with removing snow from around all those outdoor dining structures. 31-year-old Brandon Bernard has seen 8 New York City winners during his time as a host at La Bella Vita in Little Italy.
Hungry? Ready for dinner?
He knows any significant amount of snow on Mulberry Street can present a problem for him and neighboring businesses. The roadway is only wide enough for one lane of traffic, and there isn't a whole lot of extra space to put any excess snow once it's pushed away.
I remember like a couple of years ago, we had a whole lot of snow to the point where you couldn't walk in the sidewalks. You had to walk in the middle of the streets.
And walking in the street is not an option this year. Due to the pandemic and the current ban on indoor dining, nearly the entire block is filled with outdoor dining structures, sometimes on both sides of the street. The structures didn't come cheap, and Bernard worries they might be damaged or need to be taken down during snow removal after this week's storm.
If it does snow as badly as they say it would, you know, to put this back up and to take it down, to then put it back up, that's going to cost double than what it is.
Mayor Bill de Blasio and Edward Grayson, the acting commissioner at the sanitation department, tried to put those concerns to rest during a press conference Tuesday. According to Grayson, the sanitation department has spent the last few months trying to look at where outdoor dining structures are to plan for any issues with snow removal.
We do have some that would be on a tighter block. For our tighter block responses, we do have holsters, which are just a small version of our salt spreader plows. We went out and did site inspections to look for roadway widths, and we've adjusted our routes so that we can have smaller pieces service the areas where it is tighter.
We did end up finding a way to get newer equipment, smaller equipment, more agile equipment, and that's going to help us with working around the outdoor dining as well.
But restaurant owners and employees aren't the only ones worried about whether the amount of snow expected will keep restaurants from offering outdoor dining as soon as they are allowed to. Some hope other New Yorkers will pitch in to help dig them out if needed.
Because it's so important to be open as much as they can, especially now. But yeah, I think people will help get rid of the extra snow.
And Anthony, the city wants to remind all property owners, not just restaurant operators, they have their own responsibilities when it comes to snow removal. They say the biggest thing is making sure that they don't put any snow back out onto the street. They say that this inhibits their snow removal process. They are also asking folks, to help each other out if possible, but you have to also make sure that the sidewalks are clear for pedestrians to make their way through. But that's the very latest from Soho. Angi Gonzalez, New York 1. Anthony, back to you.
A lot to look forward to. Okay, Angie, thanks. Well, we are used
to. We begin tonight with what's happening with indoor and outdoor dining, learning now that outdoor dining will be suspended due to the storm. Can the crippled restaurant industry take another blow? For that, let's get right to our Angi Gonzalez with that part of our coverage. Angie.
Because, Cheryl, we knew it was going to be a tough week for restaurant owners. Indoor dining was going to be ending on Monday. Last chance was on Sunday night if you wanted to dine indoors. And now this news that outdoor dining is going to be suspended, at least for the storm. Ron Orlovsky, the manager of Hummus Kitchen on 3rd Avenue, is trying to stay positive. Monday, the restaurant lost the ability to offer indoor dining amid COVID-19 concerns. Hours later, they were hit with another curveball. With a winter storm on the way, outdoor dining would have to be restricted. The city's sanitation department ordered the temporary closure starting at 2 p.m. on Wednesday.
Hopefully we'll survive this winter.
After issuing a winter operations advisory earlier in the day, DSNY later implemented a snow alert instead. An advisory would have allowed outdoor dining to continue as long as operators took necessary safety precautions. A snow alert, however, triggered more stringent restrictions. Orlovsky had already been on the fence about what to do.
The question is, would it be worth to open it? Because people usually don't come out when there's such big storms. Maybe open mainly for delivery.
In the end, the city made the decision for him, and it will require some work. A snow alert means restaurants must remove and secure any outdoor furniture and electric heaters. As of now, the city isn't asking restaurants to remove any barriers or the structures themselves. Mayor Bill de Blasio addressed the issue on New York One's Inside City Hall.
Sanitation department, transportation department, they will work with the restaurant community to be as flexible as we can.
A block away at Hill and Bay, manager Jose Clemente is taking things day by day. He says he'll follow whatever guidance the city hands down and try to make up for any losses in other ways.
The advantage we have is that we can do delivery and takeout, and we can still operate, like selling at least some coffee.
And in anticipation the snow may be significant, Hill and Bay's facilities manager has taken steps to ensure that their outdoor dining structure isn't compromised during snow removal.
We also got from the DOT the snow warning poles, which are installed already as well, and all the reflectors and everything we had done already.
And Cheryl, the city says that it's going to be reaching out to restaurant owners to let them know when the snow alert is over. They say with the current forecast, they're expecting outdoor dining to be allowed once again sometime on Thursday night. They say that if there are any changes, they hope it won't last any longer than Friday morning. That's the very latest from Murray Hill. Angi Gonzalez, New York One. Cheryl, back to you.
Angie, thank you for that live report. Now let's get... Tonight, an out-of-control car plows into a Black Lives Matter protest in Manhattan, hitting multiple people. Angi Gonzalez, live for us in Murray Hill. She's been covering this story all evening. She joins us now with an update. Angie.
Cheryl, it's not like this hasn't happened before, a car driving into protesters. What remains to be seen is whether or not the person who was behind the wheel at the time is actually charged with anything. It happened in the blink of an eye, and it's a miracle no one was killed. The moment of impact was caught on video by a witness. Some of the images are just too graphic to show. About 50 protesters watched as a dark sedan crashed and hit a half dozen participants as they made their way through the intersection of 3rd Avenue and 39th Street just after 4 Friday afternoon.
I jumped out of the way. It nearly ran me over.
2 women inside the vehicle were taken into custody at the scene, and 6 protesters were taken to area hospitals, including NYU Langone. None of their injuries were deemed to be life-threatening. Still, the incident left others participating in the march shaken.
I'm extremely stressed. It is crazy to believe that this type of thing is happening.
Shaken but not deterred. Prior to the crash, the rally went on peacefully for about 3 hours after kicking off in Times Square at around 1 p.m. Participants were marching in solidarity with prisoners being held at an immigration and customs enforcement facility in New Jersey.
Our brothers and sisters, they have been striking, they've been hunger striking for 28 days.
Nearly 100 officers arrived at the scene after the incident, but some protesters clashed with members of the NYPD during their response. Officers were at the scene when it happened. Several of them were following behind marchers on motorcycles. One of the reasons they were there to stop the driver involved nearby. And Cheryl, a source with the NYPD tells us that of the 6 protesters injured, 5 suffered injuries to the leg or to the ankle. One of them suffered a concussion. But that's the very latest from Murray Hill. Angi Gonzalez, New York 1. Cheryl, back to you.
Angie, thank you. Meanwhile, hospitals here in the city anxiously await that COVID vaccine. As we said, healthcare workers first in line. Tonight, Angi Gonzalez, live outside of Mount Sinai, Queens, with that part of our coverage tonight. Angie.
That's right, Cheryl. The process of getting the vaccine to the point where it is now has gone warp speed, so to speak. So maybe it's not that surprising that Mount Sinai, Queens is moving very quickly when it comes to teaching staff how to store and then administer the vaccine.
So we heard last night that we can expect to receive the drug as soon as this weekend.
Even before a Food and Drug Administration panel made the recommendation to authorize emergency use of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine, Mount Sinai had already taken the next step in the process. On Wednesday, they started preparing for the vaccine's arrival and distribution.
So they want us to make certain that we've looked at all the videos so that we know exactly how to unload and then how we access the freezer.
Susan Mashney, the Vice President and Chief Pharmacy Officer from Mount Sinai Health System, is wasting no time. She wants to make sure pharmacy staff at Mount Sinai, Queens and Astoria are ready when the vaccine arrives.
So this is the liquid nitrogen that you remember that we had extra.
The virus waits for no one. COVID-19 set a new record this week, with 3,100 deaths across the U.S. attributed to coronavirus within a 24-hour period. Mount Sinai has its game plan ready for getting the vaccine to those who need it most.
Really quickly vaccinate the 1A1 team. So it's everybody from the ICU, the ER, even folks like environmental services, transport, food services.
And because there isn't enough of the vaccine for everyone to get it just yet, pharmacies that do receive doses, like Mount Sinai, have to be extra careful about how it's stored.
You know, we only have about 90 seconds to unload the box and get it in the freeze.
The goal is to ensure that not a single drop is compromised.
If you end up defrosting more than you need, you have 5 days to use the defrosting.
And in walking through their plan this early, the hope is that they have a plan for everything, down to every detail.
So you're just going to have regular standard name labels, not necessarily patient-specific, right? Not patient-specific.
And Cheryl, officials here at Mount Sinai say that they only expect to have a few thousand doses of the vaccine here on site at any given time, but say that they have freezer storage at other hospitals across the Mount Sinai Health System to get the vaccine out to more people. But that's the very latest from Astoria, Queens. Angi Gonzalez, New York 1. Cheryl, back to you.
Angie, thank you for that. And tonight, that New York's smallest borough now has the highest COVID death rate in the city. Angi Gonzalez begins our team coverage. She's live in South Beach tonight with more. Angie.
Yeah, in South Beach, Cheryl, where a field hospital has been set up behind me since the height of the pandemic. Staten Island also has one of the highest positivity rates, the highest consistently of all 5 boroughs when it comes to COVID cases. And while the number of deaths due to COVID are a concern not only for people who live here, they're also a concern for people who work here, specifically healthcare workers. Over the last 2 weeks, Skype and FaceTime have helped nurse Alexis Sufante communicate with people outside her home. A little over 2 weeks ago, the Staten Island University nurse of more than 6 years caught COVID-19, forcing her to miss a cross-country trip to see family. So she spent Thanksgiving alone.
I'm still testing positive. It makes me very nervous. I'm very anxious.
And she doesn't anticipate those feelings will subside when she returns to work. According to Governor Cuomo, Staten Island now has the most coronavirus-related deaths of all 5 boroughs, even though the borough itself only represents 5% of the city's population.
25% of all the fatalities in New York City come from Staten Island.
And Sufante dreads doing what she had to do at the height of the pandemic, connecting loved ones, sometimes out of state, with a dying family member because they were unable to visit in person amid a slew of COVID-19 restrictions.
Every day, you don't know what you're walking into. And
Judy Sheridan Gonzalez, the president of the New York State Nurses Association, says she hears that from nurses all the time.
We haven't even processed some of the trauma that we went through. And I think people are very concerned about seeing this happen again.
What Gonzalez worries about most in places like Staten Island is that nurses are getting personal protective equipment that fits so that they can protect themselves and ensure that there's enough staff to treat everyone who needs help.
We have a large number of nurses that are out because of it.
Dawn Candello, another Staten Island University Hospital nurse with 33 years experience, says that without the proper staffing, a large surge in cases could put them right back to where they were this spring, and that scares her.
Psychologically, the anticipation of what transpired in the springtime, the first round, and now it's a heightened anxiety.
And Cheryl, the president of the New York State Nurses Association, adds that it's really important that we ensure local nurses don't get sick unnecessarily, because the nurses that came from other parts of the country in order to help us out in the spring are not available because they're handling COVID cases in their own neighborhoods. In South Beach, Staten Island, Angi Gonzalez, New York 1. Cheryl, back to you.
Angie, thank you for that live report. Ones fearing closures tonight. Nearly 24 bars and restaurants here in the city have had their liquor licenses suspended for violating COVID regulations. Among them, a business owner in Brooklyn who says he's already paid $10 grand to get his license back to no avail. Angi Gonzalez is live in Bushwick with that part of our coverage. Angie.
And Cheryl, the owner says he's going to have to fork out even more tomorrow because he had his liquor license pulled. Yet again, his situation is one that it's hard not to sympathize with, but it's one a lot of business owners are dealing with. Luis Jara's restaurant, New York Pizza Cafe and Spanish food in Brooklyn, is on a list no bar or restaurant owner wants to be on. According to the state liquor authority, Jara's business is among many others across the state to have their liquor license pulled for allegedly violating coronavirus-related restrictions.
And so, like a few months ago, the liquor authority took my license. I paid $10,000 to get it back.
And unfortunately for Jara, he's on that list for the second time since the pandemic began. His Bushwick business is among 36 mentioned in Governor Cuomo's latest update on COVID-19 enforcement at restaurants across the state. This time, the infraction will cost him 3 times as much.
A few days ago, and the liquor authority took my license back again, and to ask for $30,000 to pay to get a license back.
And Jara's paying it not because he can afford it, but because he can't afford not to. Even though paying all that money has forced him to borrow money from family and friends.
Yeah, I have to pay because I live for this. I pay my rent. I support my son, my family.
Jara says fighting the allegations in court would cost him thousands in legal fees anyway. So while he doesn't agree with what the New York City Sheriff's Office says happened at the bar, he believes paying the fines now will get him back open quicker and making money, rather than waiting for his next court hearing.
I do my business, so working hard to get this business. I don't want to lose room, faster like this.
Also on the latest list, almost 24 establishments in the 5 boroughs. Max Public House on Staten Island, whose general manager is facing his own legal woes, is among them. In Queens, more than 6 lost their liquor license in the latest round, 3 of them karaoke bars. Assemblyman Ron Kim believes that some of them are just trying to survive.
So I think our responsibility is that instead of criminalizing their pains and sufferings, like what if we step up and do something about it to subsidize their losses?
And Cheryl, Kim fears that with so many small businesses on the brink, some of them having to pay thousands of dollars in fines to the state liquor authority, others having thousands in back rent to pay, that this, what we're seeing now happen with small businesses, may change the fabric of New York City neighborhoods. But that's the very latest from Bushwick. Angi Gonzalez, New York 1. Cheryl, back to you.
Angie, thank you. Death toll climbs to 80. We begin our coverage tonight on Staten Island, where the general manager of a bar under arrest, accused of trying to mow down an officer. Mac's Public House now a symbol of defiance as businesses in that orange zone on the brink of collapse. Angi Gonzalez live in Grant City outside that bar, leading us off tonight. Angi.
Cheryl, a catalyst for a movement that was also the impetus behind a rally that was supposed to be held earlier today. It was supposed to be a march through Staten Island in support of not only Mac's, but all small businesses on Staten Island that may be suffering. But it was not well attended. In fact, the participants that were showing up today, they actually came here. So the question is whether or not public support for Mac's is now waning after the legal troubles now facing Mac's general manager. But Cheryl, we're seeing that the bar has some pretty diehard supporters.
Every time a small business opens and shuts down.
Chris DiBardino was back outside Mac's Public House Monday night, joined by a small group of supporters, many of them familiar faces from last week's rallies, supporting the Staten Island business in its fight against the state's COVID-19 restrictions.
And we're going to be here and we're going to fight for these small businesses.
DiBardino returned to keep his promise. Last Thursday, he vowed to return each day until Mac's reopened. Business did return Friday and Saturday, but the comeback was brief.
This is about bullying small businesses.
Mac's is closed again, the second closure of the bar in less than 7 days. The move follows the second arrest of Mac's general manager, Danny Presti. Last week, Presti was booked for obstructing governmental administration. Early Sunday, Presti was arrested again, this time on more serious charges, including reckless endangerment and assault.
I have nothing but the utmost respect for the NYPD and law enforcement. I think when the investigation is complete, you're going to find out that I did nothing wrong.
The sheriff's office alleges Presti hit one of their deputies with his vehicle. Part of an altercation was captured on surveillance video provided to New York One by Presti's attorney, who says it contradicts the sheriff's narrative. The attorney did not reveal the source of the video.
They came in, swept Danny away in 4 minutes like he was Osama bin Laden.
But Presti garnered no sympathy from state and city officials. Before the video was released, Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio denounced Presti's actions during his encounter with sheriff's deputies.
I think his actions are extraordinarily disturbing. I think they're disgusting.
You don't assault a police officer.
We showed Presti's supporters the surveillance video, and they had a much different take.
He jumped on the car. Now, did he know that guy was a sheriff? Was that guy in his uniform?
But why is he jumping on the car? I disagree with that. He should have never jumped on the car.
And the situation with the uniforms, Cheryl, is another issue of contention in this case. According to Presti's attorney, the sheriff's deputies that were involved in his client's arrest were not wearing, or he said that they were dressed in dark clothing and that they were unidentified individuals. Meantime, from the criminal complaint, we hear from the sheriff's office that those officers were in uniform. So you got to tell us who you believe. But that's the very latest from Grant City, Staten Island. Angi Gonzalez, New York One. Cheryl, back to you.
Excellent reporting, Angi. Thank you for that. And the city right now, another act of defiance. A bar that was shut down for disobeying state orders, serving drinks on this Friday night. The general manager arrested just days ago, giving his side of the story to New York One as police move in tonight. Angi Gonzalez live in the Grant City section of the borough with the latest developments. Angi.
Yeah, Cheryl, of course, this was a surprise to us. We came out here tonight to see whether or not any of the supporters who were out here yesterday, a small group of them anyway, were back out here again, only to find out from the general manager that Mac's Public House was back open. Early on, the scene outside Mac's Public House on Friday night looked no different than it would have a year ago. But there is a big difference this week. The pub has been at the center of a COVID controversy. Still, management and patrons threw caution to the wind and slowly filtered into the pub for the first time since the business was shuttered on Wednesday.
So we're open. Larry! Hello, Ian. Didn't know it'd be this easy.
As the evening wore on, a line started to form outside with supporters hoping to get in. There's been no shortage of support for Mac's and its general manager, Danny Presti. He was arrested Tuesday for operating outside current coronavirus restrictions for restaurants in what the state calls an orange zone. The designation prohibits indoor dining, and Max took a stand. A day later, hundreds came out for a rally in support of their campaign.
We still have the same goal. This is to get support for small businesses and get us open and get our livelihoods back.
Financial contributions continue to pour in for Max on the crowdsourcing site GoFundMe. Their campaign raised more than $70,000 by Friday night.
The support feels great, and that's what we tell people is even if you can't donate monetarily, there's always other ways to support. And that is what keeps us going.
And it keeps them going even in the face of a targeted crackdown by the New York City Sheriff's Office. One supporter said that he and other customers were well aware that being inside Max on Friday night might result in some legal consequences.
I think that's the most beautiful American thing I've ever seen, honestly, and that's what this is all about. And that's why I took the 2-hour trip to come up here.
Even the owners of Exit 13 Lounge, another Staten Island business, agreed the risk was worth it. They were among some of the first to go inside the business after it reopened.
And we closed early tonight just to come support Max Public House because we live down the block.
In order for there to be change, we all have to come together. We have to stick together.
Gary.
And Cheryl, the only local law enforcement that we did see here, the New York City Sheriff's Department, did not make an appearance here, but one NYPD vehicle did come here around 10 p.m., but by then they had actually closed Max Public House, and there were some folks that were standing outside here on the sidewalk, but no one was inside the business any longer. But that's the very latest from Grant City. Angi Gonzalez, New York 1. Cheryl, back to you.
Quick question for you, Angie. Were they allowed to reopen today?
So we've kind of gone back and forth over this. They certainly are still under the restrictions that are made for orange zones. According to state regulations, that means that they are not allowed to be doing indoor dining, and that is what people were doing tonight. They were in there inside. They could have been outside, I guess, if they had something set up like a neighboring business does, but they were inside, but there was nobody here to stop them, at least this evening. Cheryl?
At least not for now. If situation changes, we will check back in with you. Angie, thank you.
And seeing a surge in COVID cases is Staten Island. Despite having the highest positivity rate in the city, one bar in particular refuses to shut down. Supporters of Max Public House have gathered outside the bar several nights in a row, protesting state restrictions. Angi Gonzalez is live in the Grant City section of the borough with more for us. Angie.
And Lewis, supporters are trying not to let this go. They say that they're going to be here as long as they need to be in order for the bar to get the respect that it deserves. So is what they say anyway. But of course, last night you could have been here, but you wouldn't have, or you should have been wearing a mask. I would have been wearing a mask at a time like this. There were lots of people here. It was a bit of a smaller crowd though here tonight. Just under a dozen supporters of Max Public House gathered outside the restaurant Thursday night. The business still dark after it was shuttered on Wednesday, in part after management was busted earlier this week, violating COVID-19 restrictions, regulations some find unfair.
Why is the government overreacting? Is there an agenda behind all of this?
Some came with signs, others American flags, and a few said they planned on being here in the days to come.
To stand up until they're open, until this, until things are open up again. You got to stand up.
This is DiBordino's second time here in as many days. He was among several hundred who came out to support Max during a rally on Wednesday night. And while this group lacked the same numbers, they got plenty of support from passing motorists. A short drive away on Highland Boulevard stands the closest COVID-19 testing location to the bar. The line there grew as the night went on, and opinions on the situation at Max and the rally a night earlier were mixed. Half sympathized with the restaurant and its staff.
I don't think it's right that they shut down these businesses. That's their livelihood.
I actually feel for those people that, they can't basically, make a living.
Others were furious that some of their neighbors had participated in the large rally on Wednesday. They can't fathom why anyone would support a business that's breaking the law. Max general manager was arrested on Tuesday.
That was ridiculous because you out there protesting
On top of each
Because
other?
he got arrested, but you didn't think about this pandemic.
It's ridiculous.
He was
It's
wrong.
careless.
He was wrong.
All of them out there, no mask.
Others told us that while they're concerned about the behavior of others, they're focused on what they can do to protect themselves from the virus. That includes getting tested.
You should get tested. It's the best thing to make sure.
I stay home. I go to work and I come home. That's it.
And Lewis, Max Public House is actually in Staten Island's orange zone, which of course has its restrictions. But over the past couple of weeks, the positivity rate in Staten Island's orange zone has actually consistently gone down, but it is still above 5%, the statewide average, according to numbers from the 22nd to the 28th of November, put the statewide average at about 4%. From Grant City, Staten Island, Angi Gonzalez, New York 1. Lewis, back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Angie.
Cheryl.
Hey, Zach, thank you for that. We move next to Staten Island, where protests erupt this evening in support of a bar that's been forced to shut down for defying COVID restrictions. The general manager placed under arrest for staying open. Locals tonight furious with what they call a double standard. Angi Gonzalez live in the Grant City section of Staten Island. Angie.
Cheryl, it's hard to believe, but not long ago, hundreds of protesters actually gathered outside of the restaurant here on Staten Island. All that is left now, as you can see, more than a dozen sheriff's deputies that were charged with making sure that no one went inside the business.
I always worked, I always paid my bills, and now they want to take it from us.
Christine Salika showed up nearly an hour before a planned protest outside of Max Public House on Staten Island Wednesday night. She and eventually hundreds of others gathered outside the Grant City restaurant.
Political hack! Hands off back!
This after the general manager was arrested Tuesday night, and the business was found to be in violation of multiple health and safety violations. The pub was closed to business by Wednesday afternoon, and Salika says that's just wrong.
This absolutely resonates with me. While our state legislator and our governor and our mayor destroyed New York City, they're collecting their paychecks while they put us all out of business.
Salika, a wife and mother, is a makeup artist by trade and hasn't worked since mid-March. She says it's important for her to support Max because they're fighting back against the rules she believes were supposed to protect the public from COVID, but are now killing off small businesses.
Why would I sit home? Make yourselves cheap and the wolves will devour you. I won't. I'm not a doormat.
State Senator Andrew Lanza also refused to take no for an answer.
Tell me why.
No one is allowed in here.
Lanza showed up well before the protest and tried to gain entry to Max, claiming he was there to legally represent restaurant staff pro bono. He was stopped and briefly detained by several sheriff's deputies who blocked the door in the morning and into the evening hours as well.
There's frustration, there is anger, and yes, even some defiance.
That defiance was initially fueled by COVID-19 restrictions that limited business at Max. The restaurant is in an orange zone and as a result can't offer indoor dining, but did anyway. Their actions have landed them in hot water with authorities, but generated support from community members who say they're sick and tired.
The small business owners, the heart of the economy, is being shut down because of regulations with this virus.
And Cheryl, many of the protesters put direct blame on Governor Andrew Cuomo, saying that he is failing small businesses. We did get comment from the Cuomo administration. A spokesperson said that the owner of Max is breaking the law as a political statement, adding that he is putting his neighbors at risk. In the Grant City section of Staten Island, Angi Gonzalez, New York 1. Cheryl, back to you.
Angi Gonzalez reporting live for us tonight. Thank you for that. Two others, their lives only yesterday. And there are more than 1 million New Yorkers over the age of 65, making up about 13% of the city's population. Many on alert tonight after getting news that they should stay home as COVID infections rapidly spread. Angi Gonzalez is live in Clinton Hill with reaction from seniors. Angi.
That's right, Cheryl. And seniors haven't been able to visit senior centers like this one here behind me in Clinton Hill since the start of the pandemic. In fact, among the seniors that we spoke with, they say a lot of what they've been doing to protect themselves, they've been doing since the spring. So they're not quite sure why the advisory changes anything for them now.
I feel like not 70.
Brooklyn resident Ann Maldonado isn't what you might expect of a senior citizen or a great-grandmother. And technically, she's both.
Exercise my hands and my feet.
She usually starts her day at 5 a.m. And while the pandemic and colder weather has moved many of her activities indoors, it's her choice when she stays home. She's not going to let anyone tell her what to do.
Why should we be treated as though we're incarcerated?
That's Maldonado's take on an advisory issued by the city's health commissioner Tuesday. It recommends New Yorkers 65 and older and those with underlying health conditions limit activities outside their home due to a rapid increase in COVID cases and hospitalizations.
That means stopping non-essential activities, staying in as much as possible.
Maldonado says she didn't need an advisory to know how to take care of herself. Since the start of the health crisis, she's been using Zoom a lot to avoid any unnecessary contact or travel.
I do this Zoom, then I might have a Zoom tonight.
Weekdays, she'll spend hours taking part in programming offered by the city's Department for Aging because all of their senior centers are closed to in-person programming. Turns out, Maldonado likes this format better. It actually allows her to spend more time with her granddaughter, Miracle.
She's 8 years of age.
66-year-old Margot also takes part in virtual activities, but does it with the nonprofit Self-Help Community Services. She too says the commissioner's advisory won't change her behavior either.
I've already been heeding that advice. I really don't see that it's much different from what I've been hearing all along.
Places like Self-Help have worked hard to adapt their services to ensure that their 20,000 clients stay connected even when they can't in person. They do it using a virtual senior center.
We are able to bring our clients together through actual formal classes or for special events such as Hanukkah.
So while the city, Cheryl, has virtual programming, instead of opening places like this senior center, Self-Help Community Services has its own virtual classes. They hold about 40 different types of lessons and courses throughout the week. They say that they actually didn't start this program with the pandemic, believe it or not. It actually started in 2010 as an effort to get homebound seniors more active with other people in the community. That's the very latest from Clinton Hill. Angi Gonzalez, New York 1. Cheryl, back to you.
Angie, thank you for that. And tonight,